All right, in this tutorial, I'm going to talk a little bit about links and some other kinds of inline characteristics, and specifically like also how you can utilize some things with attributes as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a new pen. I'm in CodePen and drag these two things down. And I'm going to get started by calling it links attributes values strong and M. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And before I do anything, I'm going to add it to my practice lesson collection. And I'm going to start over here in the HTML. So first things first, let's talk about the anatomy of a link. So let's make some links here. We're going to do A, right, and then href. And I've already shown you this in a different tutorial. And this is where you would put, for right now, I'm going to put a hashtag there as a placeholder. That's where the link would go in this value, right? That's where we would have the address where we're going to go visit. And then you're going to close that opening tag and let's go ahead and end it. And then everything that goes in between this opening anchor tag and this closing anchor tag is what is clickable on the screen. So if I type something like go to Google, you see over here it shows me a blue underline link. That's the default styling that a browser is going to give a regular anchor link that is active. Now, the other thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is explain to you that there are two different types of links. Right now, if I were to go to Google, all right, that is going to be referred to as an absolute link. An absolute link is one where you are putting an absolute path to an address that goes outside of your own website, somewhere else in the web universe. So for instance, let's say that I'm using an analogy. Let's say that we're in a house and I'm in the house with, Bill and Tom. And whenever I'm just in the same house, or, I can use what are called relative links that don't have full pathways, like with the domain name and everything, because they're just in the same house and I could just like go into the other room and get them, right? But if Bill or Tom, if either one of them decided to go, let's say to Sweden and visit, and I wanted to send them some paper correspondence through snail mail, then I would have to have a full address, and including country, the city, the postal code, the street, the name, everything, right? And that is sort of like what it is whenever you have an absolute link in an anchor tag. So an absolute link would include the scheme, and we talked a little bit about that before in the lecture. Scheme is http:// All right, that's required. And then you would put, whatever it is, google.com or yahoo.com or whatever, and in this case it's google.com. That's the web address for us to go to google.com. Without that http:// it's not going to know what to do with that google.com. All right, it needs this scheme to understand that it needs to go out to the web and invoke the web browser to go look somewhere else outside of its own file system. Okay, so if I were to save this, I can click down here where it's got this open live view in a new window. And one of the things that I want to point out is that this is one of the limitations of using CodePen, is that if I just click on this Google link, it doesn't do anything. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your code. In fact, if you have your status bar turned on, and by the way, your status bar is this thing that is highlighted at the bottom of the screen right now where it says google.com, and the status bar, what it does is that when you hover over a link, it tells you where it's going to take you. Anyway, if I see that and it says that it's going to go to google.com, it should work. The problem is that because CodePen is loading this browser view inside of the CodePen page, you see it's got the CodePen header up here. It won't actually load the page inside of the CodePen page, right? So one of the things that you can do is you can test it by right-clicking and saying open in a new tab or in a new window, and you see that the link does in fact work. So that is one of the limitations, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can get around that in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to go ahead and show you that. And real quickly, I'm going to go ahead and close that and then come back to here, and I can scoot this over now And you'll see that it does the same thing here. If I click it, it doesn't do anything, but if I right click, I open it in a new tab. I just wanted to show you that, going down into a brand new window where it goes open live view in a new window isn't magically going to make the link work in a different way. So that is a limitation that CodePen has if you want to have your links just work immediately. We'll talk just, as I said, in a minute about how you can work around that. All right, so anyway, this is how you write an absolute link, and this could be anything. This could be, for instance, if I copied this, let's copy it. We'll come down here and we'll say go to Yahoo, and then we'll say that this is yahoo.com, right? And you'll see if I put these two anchor tags right next to each other, even on even on different lines in my HTML, you see that they're side by side over here in the web browser. All right, so that's because anchor tags are inherently inline elements, and so they want to sit next to each other on the same line. So in order for you to get them on different lines, one of the things you could do is you could put them in paragraph tags individually. You could put them in list items. You could put a break tag after each one. So if I highlight that first one and I do Shift Command A, I'm going to wrap it in a P tag, and you see that it looks different now. I'm going to undo that. Right? And then I'm going to show you another option if I were to put a break tag at the end. Let's go ahead and do that. You see that what it does is it drops this one down immediately to the next line. That's one option. Okay. You could also wrap this, for instance, inside of a list item. So if I do Command Shift A again and I put LI, and I'll put this one inside of an LI too. And then I'd put both of these LI tags inside of either an ordered or unordered list. I'll put it in a UL. All right, and so that's a valid way to format those links as well. It's okay to just have them sitting side by side, but if you want them to visually stand out and stand apart from each other, then you need to do something a little bit different. Another thing that some people will do, if I undo all of those steps, let's do undo all of that. Another thing that some people will do is, I'll scoot this over, is that they'll come over here and they'll put a space in between, and they'll put a pipe. It's just an up and down line and then another space, and you see that it separates it visually, like if you just wanted them to sit next to each other. And of course you can style them to be floating next to each other side by side, or stacked, or however with CSS, but we're not there yet. So some people will do this. This pipe that's actually a programming word for what that is. It's the character just above your enter or return key on the right side of your keyboard. That's the up and down line. So you'd have to hold down the shift key and press the key that's right above your return key to get that pipe. And it's not a special character or anything. It'll show up just fine in the web browser. Anyway, so that's how you can make a couple of absolute links. Now, there's some other things that you can do as well. And let's go up here and we'll just say absolute links. Okay. And in fact, you could say include the scheme. And you could even put the HTTP : like that scheme. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to put it inside of a comment. So I'll do command /, and it automatically puts that in a comment for me so I can see that that's different. Now the other thing that I'm going to do is I'll put some dummy text so that I have a bunch of content on the page. And let's go ahead and end that paragraph tag. And okay, so if I come over to look for some lorem ipsum, I can go to the generator here, and I can just copy some. I don't care what it is. I'll just copy. Actually, I'll copy this whole paragraph. Okay, and I'll jump back over here and I'll paste that inside. I can copy another paragraph. In fact, I can copy, let's just copy all of these paragraphs. So I've got lots and lots of text, and what I'll do is I'll just come in, I'll wrap them in P tags. So I'll select this, do a Shift Command A, put a P tag around it, again, I'll wrap this, Shift Command A, I'll put a P tag. And let's say maybe this one, just for the heck of it, let's do it a little differently, and we'll do Shift Command A, and I'll put a block quote around this as if it's a quote lifted from someplace. Okay. All right, and so now I've got a really, nice long page, and I want to show you how you can have something that's an anchor link. So one of the things that I can do here, just so that I have some separation visually between these absolute links that are up here and these other ones, is I'm going to use what's called a horizontal rule, and it's just an HR tag, and that is a self-closing tag, like a break tag is. And you see it draws a line. Literally, it's a horizontal rule, R-U-L-E, a line across the page. All right, and so what I can do after that horizontal rule, just so I can see the breaks, is I can go up here and let's say, actually, yeah, let's say, let's go up to the very top, and I'm going to make a little bit more hierarchy here. So let's do an H1 tag, and we'll say links, all right, and we'll end it like that. Okay, and so I've got a title for links, and then I'll put a horizontal rule. Okay, and then the next thing that I can do is I'll have an H2, let's say. I'll put absolute links like that, and I'll end my H2, and then it changes here. And then down below that, what we can do is I'll have another H2 underneath this last horizontal rule here, and we'll say internal page links. Okay, and I'll say using named anchors IDs. Okay, and I'll explain what that means. Okay, so the thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a link that will jump to the bottom of the page, for instance. So I'm going to go ahead and put that link in. Let's just go ahead and do it as an A, and I'll just type it this time, href, and you see it's popping up in my little tooltip right here. So I'll say href equals, and I'll put my quotes. And for right now, I'm just going to put a pound symbol or a hashtag, and I'll come back to that and we'll figure out what's happened. And you'll notice, I haven't really been pointing this out so much, but you'll notice that I haven't finished typing my A tag, and I want you to look off to the right side. And because I haven't finished the A tag, it's seeing all of the rest of these paragraphs, block quotes and everything, as a link, right? So if you see something weird happen on your page where everything seems to be a link and it shouldn't be, it probably means that you didn't end an A tag properly. So like a lot of times what will happen is students will have, some link here, but they won't properly end their A tag. Like maybe that's what they have or something, and it messes it up, right? It doesn't do something right. And different browsers will interpret it differently, or they'll do that. And everything is a link after that, you see, because we didn't end the A tag. So make sure that you end your tags properly, okay? All right, so we have a placeholder for this link, and then what I want to do is I'll say jump to bottom, okay? Say jump to bottom. And of course, none of this is anything, it doesn't have any meaning at all. I'm just showing you some conventions that you can use to, that you can employ to get the page to do what you want it to do. And so anyway, if you want to just be able to skip all of this article and just jump to the bottom of the page for some reason, then you have to have an address that it's going to go to. Well, right now, as it is, it's already going to refresh the exact same page because, as I told you before, hashtag inside of an href means that it's going to go to the page that you're currently on again, right? It's going to refresh it. So we need something more than that. We need to tell it where in that same page to go. In order to do that, you have to have something with an ID. So I'm going to go ahead and jump down or scroll down to the bottom here. And let's make something, for instance, let's just make a footer. Just make the bottom of the page a footer. And we'll put in And a paragraph will have a copyright or something. I don't know, you can put whatever you want. Copyright Jane Doe. All right, and then we'll end that paragraph. And then we need to end the footer. But what I want to do right here for the footer, I can't just say jump to footer because this is just an HTML tag. I have to actually have an ID. So I'm going to add an attribute to the footer that is ID equals, and then we're going to call it footer. And you can have an ID that is the same name as the actual HTML element. We could also call it page close or something like that. Here, let's just be really, so that we don't get confused, let's call it page-close so that we know that that's, or page-end even. Any of those things would work. So I'm going to call my ID page-end for the footer. And then now I have this thing, I can copy, it's page-end. I can scroll up here to where I've got this anchor link, and where it has this hashtag, right after the hash, I can type in page-end. And what that'll do is it will it'll like basically refresh the same page, but it'll refresh it and jump to the specific place on the page with that ID so that it's showing. So let's go ahead and do a test with this. And if I click on that, this kind of link actually will work because it's in the same page. It's not trying to go outside of our website or outside of our page. So it will actually work. So if I click on jump to bottom, you see it jumps down so that this copyright is now visible. Okay. Anyway, I thought that that might be a useful thing. And then the other thing that we could also do is down here, we could have something that says inside of, actually let's do another separate paragraph like this, and we'll end the paragraph. Here, let's just, to make that really clear, make this easier to see what's going on. And by the way, if this footer isn't, it's like not coming back to the line properly, I can hold down ShiftTab and it will do the opposite of tab. It'll remove the indent. Okay, so inside of this paragraph tag, let's make something that says back to top of page or something like that. Okay, and then if I highlight that and I do Shift Command A, I can wrap that A tag around it. And right here where it says href equals, I'll type pound top. Now here's the thing, we don't have something with an ID of top yet. I'm going to go ahead and type that though, and then I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top where it says h1 links, and I'm going to give that h1 an ID equals top, like that. Okay, and so now if I click on jump to bottom, I can click on back to top of page and it jumps back up here to the top of the page, which is pretty cool. Okay, so that is how, if you wanted to have major sections of a page, you literally would just add an attribute called ID, and then you're going to give it a value. And the thing is that it can't, just as this is important, it cannot start with a number, so you couldn't put like 1 or 2 or something like that. It would have to start with a letter. That is always true of the values for IDs in classes, which classes we haven't even gotten to. But since we're talking about IDs, because they are actually actionable in the HTML without using CSS, like for instance, like what we're using them for now, I will talk about them. So they have to start with some sort of consonant or vowel, some sort of letter. They can't start with a number. And the other thing is that you can't have spaces in them. So I couldn't have like top page or something like that. I couldn't do that. It would have to be like top dash page. But now that I've changed this, the problem is that top dash page does not match top. All right, so you got to make sure that you're using the right spellings and things like that. The other thing that's true is that these IDs are case sensitive. So if I were to capitalize this and say ID equals capital T top, right? Then see where it says lowercase t, in theory this link should not work. Now it might work in some browsers, but in some other browsers it won't work. So I'm just going to let you know that if I do a test with this where this link actually says to go to the lowercase top, and the ID is actually with an uppercase top with a T, there are going to be websites where it's not going to work. So let's do a test. If I click on back to top of page, it works in this particular application, but I'm telling you right here and right now that it does not always. You really need to make sure that whenever you capitalize something in a class or an ID, you absolutely must capitalize it everywhere. And so it's really easy to make that mistake and forget what you capitalize and don't capitalize. So as a rule of thumb, I suggest that you do not capitalize your IDs and classes when you make these words up. It is a really bad habit, because also later when we get to styling, absolutely, and this is not sort of a question, it's a definite. Absolutely, something that is capitalized as an ID or a class, if you try to style it and you don't capitalize it, or you don't use the right case, it's not going to work. So make sure that you are paying attention to the case. All right, something else that I did want to also show you is that you can also use what are called strong tags and M tags, emphasis tags, in order to give some kind of semantic clarity to things that you're trying to emphasize. And this is really simple. And so one of the things that I might do is make this, I don't know, like maybe the first clause in the sentence strong. For some reason, maybe it's very important. And if I use a strong tag, visually what the browser is going to do by default is it's going to make it bold. So if I highlight this and I do Shift Command A to wrap a strong tag, you can type the word strong and it'll wrap a strong tag around it, and you see that it bolded that first clause in the line. And you can bold anything pretty much. So if I were to, anything that's text. So if I go over here to this A tag and say jump to bottom should be strong, then, or bolded, then I can do my Shift Command A, wrap a strong tag around that. Okay, and then you see it becomes bold and it gets a greater hierarchy. Okay, and maybe I also want to emphasize it separately, and so I can also take that A tag and I can highlight that, and let's do the Shift Command A, and I want to emphasize it in addition to making it have a strong reading to somebody who's in using a screen reader. That tag is EM for emphasis. And some people will ask, what is the difference? Well, visually, in terms of the visual styling, strong is going to bold something by default in the browser, and emphasis tag, the EM tag, is going to italicize something. It's going to make it oblique. And so a lot of times what people will do is they'll put an emphasis tag around like the title of a book or something, and really that shouldn't have emphasis, it should just be italicized. And so what's interesting is that the EM tag, it actually means to emphasize something with strong emphasis, but italics just means to italicize something. So if you're trying to follow traditional conventions, and let's say that you have something that is the title of a book, let's make a paragraph tag, for instance, and we'll do end paragraph, and we'll say this book, and then we can say To Kill a Mockingbird is a terrific one. Okay, and so if I wanted to italicize To Kill a Mockingbird, there's no reason for me to put some sort of like really serious emphasis on it, like, that's going to be spoken louder, or, more, with more exuberance, right? Really, it's just about italicizing it. So that actually does have something called an I tag. So we can do Command Shift A, and we can put an I tag around that. And that actually will do an italicized treatment of it that is really about keeping conventions with the way that you're supposed to italicize something that's a book title, for instance. Okay, and there is also a B for bold tag. Now with the B tag, that is where you start getting into some kind of tricky stuff, like, why would you use bold if you're not trying to emphasize it in some way or make it strong? Because the whole point of making something bold is to really grab your attention. Bold doesn't really have any kind of writing convention the same way that like the I tag does, like the italicized tag. The writing convention for italicize is that like you would italicize foreign words. Whenever you're writing stuff in English, you would italicize the names of movies, the names of books, things like that. But there's nothing in our language that is a tradition that I'm aware of anyway, where you would bold something to designate it as a special type of thing, right? To me, if you're bolding something, you're just trying to call it out to make it more prominent, and that is exactly what this strong tag does. The strong tag has very clear semantic meaning. The bold tag does not. So if I never use the B tag, the bold tag. I never do. I always use strong. There are times where I will use italicized stuff. I'll use the I if it's something that's a writing convention, but if I'm trying to emphasize something, but I don't want to make it super strong. I just want to emphasize this. I'll use the EM tag. Okay, and as I said, you can wrap those around pretty much any kind of text. So I want to go ahead and end this here. And as I said, later there's a sort of a workaround to this problem where you can't click here, just by clicking. I'm clicking on go to Google, go to Yahoo. I'd have to right click and go to a new tab. I'll show you that in a different tutorial.